So I've probably gone over my time. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows, right? Well, they're quiet, and so I don't know if it's kind of like shut up and sit down or whatever. But that's, pretty much, I think, a little bit about what we have, and you may have some specifics, and here comes trouble.
Well, first of all, I want to say I enjoy the signal. I think the signal has made important changes. I don't want to give a narrative too much, but I'd like to see you perhaps compare the paper to the Antelope Valley Press and the Ventura County Star. It seems like when I drive to the Antelope Valley and I buy their paper, I can't get through their paywall. They have a strong paywall. You just can't. And there are issues that affect both areas.
Yes.
And it seems to me like the Antelope Valley Press is a more vibrant paper. I don't know what their circulation is.
It is. It's greater than ours. It is more vibrant.
And the Ventura County Star, I don't know. Where are they in terms of...
Yeah. Well, a couple of things you should know. First of all, the Antelope Valley Press was just sold 2 weeks ago. So the family, the Markhams, are no longer owning it. Bill Markham and I met in 1973, so I've known Bill for that long. I'm not a friend. I wouldn't even describe myself as an acquaintance. We worked together once, and I've seen him once since I've been back. He was a very smart and businessman, and he had a very good general manager working for him. And they've done a very good job in building their business over the last 30, 40 years. Their community, and because of the Lancaster-Palmdale split, I understand, he gets more support in the Palmdale area than he does Lancaster. But he built a relationship, and they love their AV press. They believe their AV press, and they've bought into the concept that the community needs a local newspaper. So both the advertisers and the residents truly support the paper. That's not a shot on Santa Clarita. It's just we haven't done a great job over the last 40 years in making that connection with you and with the other business owners. We haven't built the products, and we are in the process of doing that. For example, we've just launched over this last year a number of new products into the market to assist. One was SCV tickets, which allows us to put on events and promote others' events and facilitate that. We just launched, SCV Perks, which is a discount card to all of our subscribers. But we just launched a digital agency, SDS, so now we can provide all of the digital services that any advertising agency, digital advertising agency, can do. And we didn't have that capability before. And we've redone our website, and we've redone our mobile app. Having said all that, we are now starting to see year-over-year growth in advertising. The last 3 months, or the first 3 months since we've been here, and over a number of years, over the last 5 years, it's just been a constant decline of advertising revenues. And now we have stopped that, and we've begun to turn that around. We're getting smaller advertisers in. We're doing a better job in selling products to some of the larger advertisers. And we're starting to build that up. And so now we can start investing in letting people know. There's a lot of people, believe it or not, you who've been here for 20, 30, 40, 50 years know the signal. No one was referred to as the mighty signal. Okay? You guys have an historical perspective of this. There's a lot of newcomers that don't even know we exist. So we've got to do a better job in getting out and spreading the word and asking our current subscribers to do whatever they can to help us get more subscribers. Now, the good news there is that we don't have a paywall right now. And so there's free digital access to everything we do. That's why when the city did its study, we're the #1 source of local news, by far. We have 3 times the audience that our next closest competitor has digitally, because we have about 346,000 uniques. Now, you got to cut that probably in half because people use multiple devices. So, those are IP addresses. So, not to get complicated again, but half the people might use it sometimes on their phone and the other times from their desktop or their iPad. But still, if you think about that, 175,000 people in a community where there's, a little under 300,000 residents, and some of those are children that don't have devices, and some of them are elderly that don't have devices. That's a pretty significant audience that we reach. And we reach it with 1.4 million page views every month. It's a unique and sizable audience. People come to us for local news. And that's why it's so critical for us to do that job. So the AV press is vibrant. In fact, the guy I worked for in Chicago is the gentleman who bought the newspaper in AV. And we'll watch it really carefully because they are pretty aggressive newspaper guys. Ventura County Star is different. It's owned by the Gannett Company. It was owned by Scripps. That change took place about 6 months ago. And what happened there is just that circulation is declining. That audience is getting, and it's all about money. It's a public company, and they've got to make money.
Any questions?
Any comments?
Come on.
Good, bad, or indifferent. I take the hard ones too.
Yeah, my name is Ed Dunn, and I've lived here for over 47 years with my wife. And
nice to
we
see you,
recently
Ed.
supplied a lot of good data to the Signal because we were pleased to hear the Signal possibly was independent of the Morris Publishing Company. And so I haven't seen anything come out in the newspaper due to the information we've supplied, but I understand your reason being new, you've got to digest. But that's all checkable. That information could be checked out, and it's very important. I'm wondering if you will go ahead with coming out with information on this SB 634 that is very bad for our community, is making an authoritarian regime, and it's going to be terrible. It's an unworkable bill, but they're going to push it through anyway. And we're getting the data, and we're hoping the Signal can make our local our residents aware of what's going on, because they go to work and come home and they don't know what's going on.
Yes. First of all, since you brought up the fact that you've given us this information, that's another thing that's critical. We learn about the problems and the ties and the relationships here when residents like yourself bring those stories to us. We have a limited staff. We find some of this stuff, but frankly, a lot of the stuff that we work on comes from people like Mr. Dunn and others that gives us the substance we need to be able to start our reporting and our investigating. SB 634 is a very complex issue. Goes well beyond the fact of just simply bringing water districts together for efficiencies or to resolve legal disputes and eliminate costs associated with hiring lawyers. The only thing I can assure you, Mr. Dunn, is that we're already on the story. You've helped us understand it to a greater level. This community will be seeing more about SB 634. Unfortunate because the way the bill is structured and the way they have elected to do this, you who are the ratepayers will have no voice in determining whether 634 goes through or not. Right. It will be the legislature, and influencing them and their decisions is now one of the things that we're looking at. Because there are some problems with 634.
It's difficult with the legislators, with the lobbyist system that we have.
Well, we're learning that, for example, our own state senator has taken a tremendous amount of money from Castaic Water over the years as a lobbyist and PR executive, a lot more than a lot of people may know.
Well, quite frankly, if you and your partners hadn't come to town, we wouldn't have brought you the information.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Hello, Douglas Frazier. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a second print paper in Santa Clarita too, called the Gazette.
Boy, I became aware of that the day I arrived.
Okay. Can you elaborate on your relationship with them and how the future of all that's going to go about? Okay.
When I arrived, the newspaper, Morris Multimedia, was involved in a lawsuit with Gazette and Doug Sutton and Jeannie Sutton. It had been a lawsuit that had been going on for quite some time. It revolved around legal advertising and the ability to take it here in the county or in the city. The battle had gone back and forth, and the only people that were getting rich, as you always hear, is the lawyers. And candidly, we looked at that and thought, oh my goodness, this is kind of a waste of time. And I reached out and had an opportunity, like in the first week or two, to ask Doug to come in, which he was kind enough to do, and we sat, and I tried to resolve that issue, in a negotiation, and I failed. Doug felt very strongly, and any of you who know Doug know that when he feels strongly, he feels strongly. So changing his mind really wasn't going to happen in that meeting. Some further state legal issues took place that we didn't feel were right. He felt they were totally right, which forced us to escalate the relationship or the confrontation in order to resolve the confrontation. And a lot of people were upset at us, and particularly me, because we used some very strong-handed techniques to get Doug back to the table. Fortunately, in the end, I think Doug realized who we were and what we wanted to do. And now I'm delighted to say that Doug and I and my other two partners are in business together in a separate partnership, SCV Publications, that owns the Gazette. The deal is that, while we would own a large part of that, Doug would have the freedom to make the decisions that were necessary for the Gazette and not lose his voice in the process. So we have a relationship with Doug that I'm the managing partner of SCV Publications, but Doug is the operating partner, and Doug runs the business on a day-to-day basis. He does his rants. He lets Steve write periodically, I think. Alan's in it almost on a weekly basis, and so we let him use his news judgment. Not necessarily mine. No, I'm only kidding. I think he's got some great guys. It saddened me, candidly, because Doug lost some good friends through this transition. Because as soon as he started working with the Signal, several people in town took it as a complete threat and basically disowned him. In fact, canceled his radio show and did some other things, which I felt was unfortunate because we're not here to take over the town. We're not here to own all the media. That was a unique situation where, we wanted to resolve a legal dispute. And when Doug says that Chuck has no control over what I do, that's absolutely true. If I tried to tell Doug how to run his newspaper or tell Doug how to write his rants, he'd tell me where I could go in no uncertain terms, and he'd be right to do that. What I can legally do and what I can morally do are two different things, and I would never and will not interfere in his relationship. As some of you know, I did speak to the City Council a number of weeks ago, and I knew there would be a price to pay for that, but my partner was attacked. He was accused of being a racist when he was trying to follow a story, and I thought that was just absolutely disgusting, not just for here in Santa Clarita, but for anywhere. Racism is a serious thing, and to accuse someone of it or to intimate it when it isn't true needs to be confronted, and they need to be called out. Now, Doug is on a story. He stayed on the story, and for those that think that it's going to die, it is not until Doug gets the answers to his question. And the question is simple. Bill, where's the money? It's a simple question. Answer it. And if you're at the chamber and you want to say these are baseless allegations and try to cover it up, you're going to find out that's not going to work either. Because he will get to the bottom of the story, because there is a story to get to the bottom of. And that is not me here saying that I think Bill took any money. I just don't think it was properly accounted for, and I don't think that the city should have relied on this expertise that was supposedly present that has been proven not to exist, and to acknowledge that. And I got into a lot of trouble, as you know, by doing that, because now I'm the poster child for some haters around town, And that's okay, because sometimes you got to stake a goat to catch a wolf, and that's okay.
Good evening. I'm Joan Dunn. I've talked to you before.
Yes?
One of the things that I have noticed in the past, it's like when there's press releases, it's written by the other side, and then there's never a response to that by the opposite side. And recently, there was an article about me, and I didn't even know it was coming up, and they never talked to me about it. And so I think that, we need both sides of the picture.
I agree.
And these folks pay good money to put all of their beautiful words and to make us believe all of this stuff. So we do need to counter that. And so I'd like to see more of that. I buy the Antelope Valley Press because I have found a lot of things in there. We have a rental house in that area, and I like to know what's happening.
Sure.
And they have things going on with dog, their ordinances. They're now looking at the animals that are biting folks. But there was something, too, in there that about the passports. And I had very good information. I thought, gee, they're going to do passports. You can go to the city hall and get your picture and everything taken. And it is by appointment. And I didn't, these sorts of things are important, I think.
Well,
and, it's just not coming out.
I would respond in a couple of ways. Like I said earlier, I think there's things that we can do a lot better. And getting that constructive criticism, I mean, we'll take all the criticism, because even in people who don't like us or who I would even describe as hate us, there's sometimes they'll say something that, is accurate, right, and we need to listen to it. Just because we don't agree with them on most of it doesn't mean that we don't hear things. The same thing with you is that you see us doing things that we could do better. I would just encourage you and encourage others in the room that if we don't get it right, call us. Complain about it. Tell us, because then it's the only way we know it exists, and then we can fix it. And if there's certain things that you want in the paper that are not in the paper, and a lot of people want it or enough people want it, we'll put it there. Because what we do, and we believe it, we are the stewards of this newspaper. This newspaper truly is owned in the concept by the community. It is for the community. I don't want to sound like Abraham Lincoln, but it is for the community, and it is by the community, and it is by the good graces of the community that we're allowed to do what we do. So you have to believe we want the criticism. You have to believe that we want to get better. You have to believe that those calls will not be received with, oh, there we go again. That's the way it was. The newsroom admits that there was a little of that going on. If someone would call and complain about something, it was like they complain about everything. But you have to listen to each and every one of those in an isolated way, because there may be merit to it, and you've got people helping you. And most assuredly, if we don't get the story right, if the story's not balanced, we don't report it correctly, we don't put the quotes in right, we don't ask the other side adequately, I can tell you for doggone sure that if we do that with a big company like the landfill, or we do that with Newhall Ranch, or we do that with someone else, I'm going to get a call. And and so why shouldn't I get a call from the other side telling me, wait a minute, the story wasn't right?
Right.
So
okay,
please, I'd encourage you to call us.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Could you discuss a little bit about how the editorial board works? I don't understand exactly.
Sure.
When I read an editorial, I don't know who's behind it. Who writes it, and what would be wrong with identifying? How do you do it? Do you get 3 or 4 people in the room, you kick it around, and then you assign it to one person to write it? I think it might help the credibility of the editorial board if you knew who was on the editorial board and who took the responsibility for writing.
Right. So there are 5 people on the editorial board today at the Signal. Our editorial page editor Lila Littlejohn, who organizes, coordinates, and brings it all together, and does a lot of the research, and also makes a lot of suggestions as to what topics should be covered. And so she kind of leads the editorial, the opinion page editor leads the editorial board. Our editor is on it, Jason Schaff, and our deputy our managing editor, Jana Atkins, is on it. So we have three editorial folks that are on the board. Russ, because he is the executive vice president of community development, is also on the editorial board because he's out in the community with the 501c3s, and he hears a lot of things, and he has been in the community for, as I said, 35 years. And I, as the publisher, sit on the board. My role is to, frankly, I spend more of my time at the editorial board as an opportunity for me to learn more about the community and to understand the groups and the people that are managing and leading. So I'm there more as an educational factor, but there are some things that get my passion going. And so I can engage in certain situations more than others. The way it works is that people come in and we'll have an editorial board. It's usually an hour. It's on Wednesdays often. And we will talk to these folks. And we will tell them everything is on the record, everything you say. We may have a reporter there, a story. We may write an editorial. We may do this or that. We may just get to know you. And we sit down for an hour and sometimes two, getting to know politicians and issues and one thing or another, and get educated. And what are those views? And we try to ask diverse groups of people in. I think some in this audience would tell you that we've talked about doing that more frequently with the groups that have not had a chance to get into the newspaper yet. Once all that's done, we determine if there's anything from those folks that we would want to write an editorial about that they said or told us or we learned or whatever. But then the other thing is we have time where we spend talking about the day's issues. For example, there was an editorial in the paper a little over a week ago, or no, last weekend, I think it was, talking about what we might want to do about speed here in the community after the death of a youngster up on, McBean. We know that speed, and when at least we're being told now, and off the record and without full documentation, but we think that person might have been traveling over 100 miles an hour. Now, we don't know that yet, so, I'm just telling you what we're hearing as rumors on the street, that the gentleman might have been driving. Speed limit isn't going to change that. If it's posted at, 50, speed at 100 miles an hour. I mean, the sign had nothing to do with it. And we had taken in a couple of editorials that said we need to change the speed limits. We need to change the speed limits. Speed limits are not going to change our behavior unless there are consequences to that behavior. And we suggested, and some in the room, including myself, who drives at times a little too fast, a zero tolerance, because we've seen in other places where it's literally eliminated traffic fatalities and slowed people down. And in fact, one writer talked about Texas, where it isn't a 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile. You get it. You got the ticket. Don't do it. And so I happen to have penned that. That happened to be my editorial because I was passionate about the fact that we lost a kid out there, a kid that was one of my children's ages, and it broke my heart, brought me to tears at what that must have been for that family, and or for the wife who just had a child born and doesn't have a father now because this guy went and killed himself by going over the speed limit. So some of them are written by us individually. Some of us are a collective work, believe it or not. What happens is someone will draft it and 2 or 3 people jump into it, and it becomes kind of a collaborative effort. And so to identify who's on it, you'd have to identify everybody who participated in it. And sometimes we even get reporters that will comment on the story to make sure it's factually accurate and everything else. In fact, I told someone earlier today, turn in your editorials, but make sure that they're factually accurate. I don't care if they're not balanced. Editorials don't have to be balanced, but they do need to be based on facts. So make sure your facts are right. So sometimes we give it to the newsroom to check the facts to make sure we're editorializing correctly. And then the real snarky ones, the stinging ones, the ones in your face, those I do put my name on because people need to know that, it is me who wrote it. It's what I think. That doesn't mean that's how the newspaper is going to completely report stories moving forward. That's another misnomer. What we say editorially has very little to do with our news coverage that's done independently. And just because I don't happen to agree with a politician here or a process or whatever, we're not going to use the newspaper and the newsroom to destroy that politician unless that politician is doing stuff that's wrong. We'll editorialize about what the politician is doing, but if it's not news, it's not getting into the news pages. And just because I own it and just because I'm the publisher of it, I'm not going to go downstairs and tell the editor, I want you to go after this guy and that guy and do the, I'm not a crook, hit list kind of thing. We're just not going to do that. It's not right. So I don't know if that really fully answered your question, but an attempt.
I didn't know that you invited people in. And I'll defer to Alan. Thank you, Alan. Go ahead.
Alan's been in. Alan sat with us. The Duns, if you don't mind me saying, the Duns have sat with us. Others, we're trying to get Andrew in.
The one that really rubbed me wrong was Measure E.
Yes.
Because I worked extremely
we know.
hard to document everything. I went to Norwalk and pulled the documents, drove them to Lila, come walking in, and there's Bruce Fortine walking out of your office. Pete, you did not do the work to talk about the funding behind that the COC nonprofit foundation put in $150,000, $400,000 to pass a $230 million bond at a school where 50% of the residents don't live in the community.
Well, we can agree, Steve, to disagree as to whether we fully did our job. I can assure you, again, the accusations that have been flying around the valley that somehow I have this untoward relationship with the Fortines and, what I thought was the most disgusting reference was to Gloria and that she's my quote-unquote lady friend.
That wasn't me.
I know it wasn't you, but pretty despicable that people go to those levels. But the thing that's important to know is that I hired a CPA.
Who came out against it?
Right, he did, and we published it. So keep in mind that it wasn't that we didn't do our job. The editorial folks did in fact believe that was okay, but we wrote stories and came out of pocket to get a senior CPA, a serious guy, who now fortunately writes for us on a regular occasion. In full disclosure, I went to high school with him. But that's not why he's working for us, because I didn't talk to him since high school, and he bracketed the class. He was at the top of it, I was at the bottom of it. So we covered the front and the bottom. But anyway, we try, and we don't always succeed. But in that case, I think we tried to give as much information and let people make their decision. And I'm not, that's not one of the ones that I'd get up here and apologize for. There's some stuff I'd apologize for, but that, to be honest with you, Steve, just we'll agree to disagree on that one. So I want to thank all of you for taking the time, and I want to thank Alan for inviting me in here today. It's been a great pleasure for me to do this, and I hope you subscribe. I hope you give us hell when we don't get it right, and I hope you tell everybody when we do. So thank you very much.